UFC Fight Night, Dolidze and Nassourdine Imavov this Saturday night from the UFC Apex. In the middleweight division, you've got two fighters really trying to crack into that top five of the weight class with a huge victory, of course, in a 5-round main event. In the co-main event, Moicano takes on Drew Dober. You've got Randy Brown and Salikhov, a fight that was originally scheduled for December, has been moved back to this card, and a chance for Natalia Silva to truly break into that top 10 of the women's flyweight division. So 13 fights on this card this Saturday night. And folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. A couple days ago, we posted just, a video talking about what should be the UFC 300 main event. I thought it was pretty decent, so go check that video out. Link will be in the description down below. Now let's get into the first of these 13 fights. We will start in the heavyweight division. We have got Jamal Pogues taking on Thomas Peterson in this one. For Thomas Peterson, this is a guy who's coming off a win on the Contender Series where he beat one Chandler Cole. Now, personally, I didn't think Chandler Cole was that great. They kind of gave Peterson somewhat of a layup fight going into that one. He beat Chandler Cole. He's a minus 750 favorite in that fight. He's taking on Jamal Pogues now. Pogues is a guy who's 1-1 in the UFC. Won 2 fights in the Contender Series, but the 2 wins in the UFC are a win over Josh Parisian back early in 2023, then fought McParkin over in London. That was a pretty boring decision. Loss in the Josh Parisian fight also wasn't that entertaining either. Jamal Pogues, I think I've already said this on the channel, but I'll preface it here. He is one of the low-level heavyweights I usually talk about. This is a guy who fought for the LFA light heavyweight championship back in 2020 against one Alex Polizzi. You probably know Polizzi best for fighting Yoel Romero a couple of years ago. Then after that, Pogues wins another fight in LFA at light heavyweight. Then he goes on to the Contender Series to fight at heavyweight. He wins, and then he goes on to fight in the UFC with a win over Josh Parisian, then a loss to McParkin. Thomas Peterson's a guy, though, who's really good on the feet, really good on the ground, at least in his, non-UFC fights, he's been good there. But this is a guy who's going to primarily show a wrestling base, and he's going to really try to go out there and work his ground and pound. However, in his last fight, though, found a heel hook, a key lock submission win over Chandler Cole. Again, I don't think Chandler Cole is the best fighter. Chandler Cole is a guy who got to fight on the Ultimate Fighter Season 30. He lost to Jordan Heiderman. This is a guy who fought in the PFL before. He lost to Ante Dilia. I have never been all that impressed with Chandler Cole. And Peterson did exactly, though, what he needed to do. He needed to show the wrestling, and he needed to go out there and get a big submission or get a win by TKO, because that's normally how Peterson will get it done. He will get it done with a ground and pound finish. And Peterson, of course, got it by submission against Chandler Cole. It is his first submission as a pro mixed martial arts fighter. When we look at the odds for this fight, I already have them on the screen right now. We got around plus 140 for Jamal Pogues, minus 165, of course, for the dissenting Thomas Peterson. I get the odds, I really do. I think Peterson should be a slight favorite. This is a guy, again, who is 8-1. The only loss coming to one Waldo Cortez Acosta, a guy who, of course, is in the UFC. Another former light heavyweight. That fight was contested at light heavyweight between Peterson and Cortez Acosta. Cortez Acosta picked up the win in the 3rd round. But Cortez Acosta, again, a guy who just beat Andrei Arlovski. He's been doing well in the UFC. Now you get this fight between Peterson and Pogues. I do think Thomas Peterson does go out there, though, and pick up the victory. This is a guy who, from Minnesota, he, after he won on the Contender, he said that he wanted to be on a UFC Minnesota or UFC Minneapolis card because he thought the UFC was going to go to the Target Center. Obviously, they did not, because the UFC just loves putting fight nights in the Apex. But again, I like Peterson a lot in this spot here. I think he is way better than Jamal Pogues. I think the wrestling is going to really pay off in this fight. And I think Peterson is going to, ground and pound his way and really just stomp out Jamal Pogues to a victory. I think Peterson is going to go out there and win. I like Thomas Peterson to go out here and win this fight by 2nd round TKO. I think you're going to see this line move a lot this week. I think Peterson will get up to the minus 200 range, just because, again, this is a guy who's only lost 1 fight, and it is to a pretty decent UFC heavyweight, a guy who is not in the low-level heavyweight ranks like a lot of these guys in Waldo Cortez Acosta. Unfortunately for Jamal Pogues, I do feel like the Stormtrooper is somewhat on that low-level UFC heavyweight rank. So give me Thomas Peterson to pick up the victory in his UFC debut. I like him to win by 2nd round TKO. My voice might be gone because I'm kind of sick, but still, let's go on to the next one here. We've got Markel Mederos taking on Landon Quinones. This will be the UFC debut here for Markel Mederos. Is a guy who is 8-1, coming off his win on the Contender Series against Isa Isikov by first-round knockout. And he's taking on Landon Quinones, a guy who has been out there in the UFC before. He had one fight, and he did lose it to Nassourdine. You probably know Quinones from The Ultimate Fighter. He went in his first fight, and he got submitted in 55 seconds. Yes, he lost that quickly to Jason Knight. He comes back, he wins a grappling bout, but then he comes into the UFC and gets the shot against Nassourdine. I was a little confused that Quinones did get into the UFC, because again, he loses his first fight pretty quickly to an old Jason Knight on The Ultimate Fighter, and they throw him right in there against Nassourdine. Given he holds his own, he does lose every single round in that fight, but he did stay somewhat competitive with Haqparast. He did trade blow for blow with him. Again, Haqparast did outstrike him and did do more damage, but I didn't feel like Quinones was that outmatched. He didn't look that bad in that fight. Now he comes in, he will get a guy here in Markel Mederos. Mederos has not lost a fight since 2022. He's won 6 since. That loss was to Santiago Guzman, a guy who really hasn't done much since that win. He was 4-2 at the time. Mederos, though, is on to bigger and better things. His UFC run, his pre-UFC run hasn't been all that bad. Wins in Fury UFC, FAC, gets the shot in the Contender Series and does win as an underdog. You look at the odds for this fight, I believe you will see, you're going to see Mederos as a favorite, -160. Quinones coming back at you in that around +135 range. Mederos is the favorite on Tapology as well. You got 73% going with him. You got about 27% going with Landon Quinones. Again, Mederos is going to be looking for the kill. This is a guy who does really go for it. You saw that win in the Contender Series, goes out there and knocks down Isikov and goes out there and picks up the victory right after. His fight pre-UFC, the fight that did get him on the Contender Series, was a knockout win in 53 seconds. It was, a fight he's just supposed to win. He fought a guy who was 8-8 at the time. He's got a big win over Tracy Reeder back at FAC 18 in 2023. He was in a main event of FAC card, of an FAC card, if I can speak English. And again, Mederos is going to look for it on the feet. This is a guy who's really quick on the feet. He's going to throw a lot at Landon Quinones in this one, but it's not like Quinones hasn't seen that. And Quinones, I definitely think, is well equipped to see a fast-paced striking matchup and a powerful guy like Mederos. I think this fight's a lot closer than a lot of people will anticipate. I think Quinones does have a chance. Again, I think he fought a much better fight than a lot of people thought he was going to fight against Nassourdine Haqparast. Even though he did lose, you look at that, he really goes strike for strike with Haqparast. It's just that, again, Haqparast does win all those exchanges and does do more damage than Quinones, but still, I thought Quinones made a decent account of himself in that fight. I am going to go with the favorite. I'm going to take Markel Mederos. I do think Markel is slightly better. I did like what we saw in the Contender Series, and I think the power advantage definitely has to go to him as well. Quinones does take a little bit more time to set up his finishes, as you've seen in his last 2 in Titan FC. And if you follow regional MMA and, across different promotions in America, Titan FC kind of sets up their prospects, their big prospects. They kind of handpick them fights so they can get them into the UFC. I'm not saying Mederos was especially that, because Mederos actually did take on some decent guys over in Titan FC. He did lose to Muhammad Naimov back in 2019 in Titan FC, a guy Naimov who is in the UFC as well after he picked up a win against Mullerkey and Wood in his first 2 fights in the UFC. But since then, again, he has been Titan FC, has Quinones, and they kind of have set him up a little bit, even though the guys he has fought aren't horrible. Just, again, Titan FC, I wouldn't say they're sketchy. I would just say that they know what they're doing in terms of trying to build up prospects. Let's take nothing away from Quinones or Mederos. I think Mederos is going to win. I'm going to take him to win this fight by knockout. I think he's going to find something huge. I think it's going to be something big early. And I'm actually going to take Markel Mederos to win this fight by first round knockout. It's not like Nassourdine Haqparast is the biggest power threat, so that I'm not too concerned about Quinones being able to walk through everything. I think Mederos does win, and I will take him to win the fight by first round knockout. On to our next one. We have got Luana Carolina taking on Julia Stoliarenko in this one in the women's flyweight division. Now, Stoliarenko has had trouble making weight in the past, if I'm not mistaken, but somehow, someway, her last fight, she did make 125 pounds, and she did go out there, and she did beat Molly McCann. Now, Molly McCann is higher up on this card. We will see here later in the video. You might ask, why is that? I don't know. Well, I do know, because they like to promote her with Patty the Batty, but it's fine. Stoliarenko is taking on Luana Carolina, two former opponents actually of Molly McCann. Luana Carolina, I guess, again, is probably most known for getting spinning back elbowed by Molly McCann back in London in 2022. And as cool of a moment as it was, right then and there, then Molly McCann went out and went into the crowd, grabbed the UFC belt, and paraded around like she was actually the world champion, which was disgusting. Anyways, Stoliarenko, Carolina. For Luana Carolina, her last fight, she beats Ivana Petrovic. A fight that, I didn't think she was going to win. I thought Petrovic was going to win. Petrovic was undefeated. She was 6-0. Petrovic comes into the UFC and really did not look like the same fighter she was over, in her regionals over in Aries, right? Like, she was the Aries champion coming into the UFC and really just didn't do anything against Luana Carolina. Did not do anything. She went out there, she got some takedowns, but Carolina kept her distance. Carolina was kind of dominant on the ground as well, found reversals, was able to find takedowns in her own right. Luana Carolina was able to win the fight. I don't think Luana Carolina is going to have a grappling advantage in this one, because if Julia Stoliarenko does anything well, it is grapple. Now, this fight is pretty easy to at least decipher when you're talking about matchups. Carolina is going to try to keep this fight on the feet. I know her big highlight, or the thing that most people know her by, is getting spinning back elbowed and losing a fight. But Carolina's best pathway to success in this fight is through the striking, because Julia Stoliarenko is a very bad striker. She just is. She doesn't do that. You look at her fights in the UFC, because she's got a lot. She's got a lot, and she does not have many wins to account for them. She's 2-5 in the UFC, and at one point, she was 1-5. But you look at her fights. First fight in the UFC, Leah Letson. She gets outstruck by Leah Letson. Have you seen Leah Letson since? No, you haven't. There's a reason for that. Then they book her against Yana Santos. Gets the fight on short notice, loses the fight to Yana Santos. That's fine. Fights Julia Avila. Actually gets submitted against Avila, but Avila, top 15 name, it's fine. Alexis Davis goes out there and beats her on the feet. Jessica Rose Clark fight. She's 0-4 in the UFC. This is a fight set up for Julia Rose Clark on International Fight Week to win. And Stoliarenko goes out there and somehow gets the win by armbar. So that just shows you Jessica Rose Clark sucks, but it's fine. Stoliarenko wins the fight. Then she goes on, she fights Chelsea Chandler. She loses. Chelsea Chandler finishes her in the first round. And then she goes out there and submits to Molly McCann. And now, I remember we were talking about the fight. All Molly McCann needed to do in a co-main event spot in London was keep the fight on the feet. And she was not able to do so, and somehow, someway, Stoliarenko was able to get a submission. It doesn't seem like Stoliarenko should win many fights. I actually predicted Molly McCann to beat Stoliarenko by first round knockout, because again, Stoliarenko is super one-dimensional, and it's really easy to beat her. But somehow, someway, it's done the job recently, and I think it's going to do the job against Luana Carolina. I've seen Luana Carolina knee barred by Ariane Lipski a while ago. I know that was a while ago. And I know Carolina has had some success grappling. But also, she has been taken down. I just don't think Ivana Petrovic is very good. I just don't think she is. I don't think she's ready yet. She had one defense in Aries of her title, maybe one, or I think she just won it and immediately got signed at the UFC. The UFC saw Serbian fighter, Croatian. I think she's Serbian. She's from Norway. I thought, is she not? Oh, she's Croatian. Okay, yeah, I thought that was the Croatian flag. Anyways, they saw a Croatian fighter, they're like, sign her. Not ready yet, right? But we've seen Luana Carolina before get beat on the ground by Lupi Godinez. Okay, she won the fight, but still, Godinez was able to find takedowns. So I wouldn't say beat on the ground, but that was where Godinez was able to have the limited success she was able to have in that fight. That was really the only success she found in that fight. Sure, Carolina outstruck her, but we've seen Carolina taken down by Godinez, who is 20 pounds lighter than her. Molly McCann was able to take her down. Joanne Wood, a washed Joanne Wood, was able to take her down. And Ivana Petrovic was able to do it a couple times. I know, again, Carolina was able to reverse things and was able to find her success on the ground as well. But still, Julia Stoliarenko will find that success. And I can't believe I'm doing this. Julia Stoliarenko by first round submission. I think that's how good she is on the ground. Again, the Lithuanian fighter is so one-dimensional. But that one dimension she's really good at, and that one dimension should be enough for her to win this fight. So give me a Julia Stoliarenko first round submission. On to our next fight here. We have got Blake Bilder taking on Jung Young Lee in this fight. The Korean Tiger will take on the American Blake Bilder. We've seen Bilder in his last fight lose to Kyle Nelson. Not a bad fight. He was a huge favorite going into that one. I was kind of disappointed that Bilder wasn't able to pick up the win in that one. Not a horrible fight. those two guys kind of went back and forth, but yeah, Bilder lost every single round of that one. He will now get Jiyoung Lee in this one. Lee is a guy who won on the UFC, a road to UFC. He won 2 fights on there, comes into the UFC, beats Yaziha in his last fight. That was over a year ago at this point, but he beats Yaziha. He beats him by split decision. He went through the road to the UFC, and he was, having a damn run for his like that dude was balling out there. That's a weird fight word to say, but still he was. Like his first fight, wins the fight by 36-second armbar. Then after that comes back, wins the fight by TKO in 42 seconds. So you're thinking, okay, he's going to go into this road to the UFC fight, the final, and he's going to go out there and absolutely kill the guy. He doesn't, but still, he wins by split decision. So he picks up the win. He was a pretty big favorite going into that one. And now here we go, he gets Blake Bilder. Bilder's a guy who fought Shane Young in his first fight in the UFC. Young's not the greatest, so Bilder again wins the fight against Young. I was really surprised Young was the favorite going into that one back at UFC 284, so I thought it was an easy pick for Blake Bilder, and it was. He went out there and just really outstruck Shane Young, and Bilder, that's what he's going to do to you. The guy is going to try to put pressure on you. Bilder is going to be in your face, and he's going to try to push the pace. Is that necessarily what you want to do against Jiyoung Lee? I don't know. Lee, again, has a lot of power. He's got submissions on the ground if the fight does go down there. But all around, this is a really solid guy. He's got a lot of different keys and pieces to his game. The only loss that he has had is to See Young Kim. He avenged that loss, and he got it back, and he won in their rematch in 2018. The guy is 10-1 and has gotten his loss back. Again, I know his last fight was a split decision win, which he kind of got taken down at times, and really, the only success Lee found was on the feet, but that's kind of what he is. I know, again, he did pick up a submission win by armbar in his first fight on road to UFC. He was able to go out there, he got taken down, and then he threw up an armbar from his back. That's not the fight Lee wants to fight. He wants to fight an aggressive fight where he's pushing the pace and he's pushing forward, he's walking forward, but he does have the submissions in his back pocket if he needs so. I don't really think Bilder is the guy to put him down. In terms of grappling, I've seen Bilder go out there and go 1 for 7 on takedowns against Shane Young. I just think that Jiyoung Lee will be able to defend those takedowns. I think Bilder will try. Don't get me wrong. I think Bilder is going to look to take him down. I just think Lee is going to be able to keep the fight standing. But really, we are going to see how good Jiyoung Lee is here. This is a litmus test for him. Because again, 3-0 in the road to the UFC. The last one, of course, being an actual UFC fight. The wins in Road FC, which we know is a pretty decent promotion. He's beat guys who are undefeated before, like Haejin Park, who was 7-0 at the time, now 10-4, but still, he's beating good guys. You are really going to see how good Jiyoung Lee is in this fight. We're going to see how good this guy is. If he's able to really push it forward on Blake Bilder, he's able to walk him down, he's able to find that shot to knock him out. I'll believe in the Korean Tiger. I think this fight's going to be competitive. I think Bilder will be able to get some takedowns, but I don't think he's going to have enough to win the fight necessarily. I think Bilder is going to get those takedowns, but I think Lee's going to keep it standing for the most part. I think Lee is going to find a lot of success in the feet. I think he is the better striker. And I think Jiyoung Lee is going to find a late finish in this fight. I'm going to go 3rd round TKO for Jiyoung Lee. I know I don't pick 3rd round finishes a lot. I just feel like this is the type of fight, and this would be the latest finish in his career. And usually he's a guy who gets going early because his fight before the road to the UFC was a 10-second knockout. I think Lee is going to have to fight through some adversity in this fight, and we're going to really see, again, gotta make a point of this, we're going to see how good he is. We're going to see a guy who is going to put him in trouble, right? Put him in danger. Like his last fight, sure, took on a real, a veteran guy who was 22-3 at the time, or 23-3. He's won 2 fights since, his last fight. He's going to be back on the road to the UFC in Yaziha, the Chinese fighter, a guy who we very well might see in the UFC again. I think Jiyoung Lee's good. I think he's got enough in the tank to win this fight. I think he'll be, I think gas tank's going to hold, and I think he'll be there at the end of the fight. Give me Lee to win the fight by 3rd round TKO. All right, on to our next one here. We have got Themba Gorimbo taking on Pete Rodriguez. Pete Rodriguez is an interesting fighter. This is a guy who had very limited experience coming into the UFC. They signed him when he was 4-0, and they said, okay, go fight Jack Della Maddalena. Why? I don't know why they did that. I think the UFC knew how good Jack Della is, and they just wanted him to win by knockout in his first fight. That's okay. Gorimbo and Rodriguez feels like a good fight, and I really don't like the odds on Themba Gorimbo. minus 245 feels a little insane for Themba Gorimbo. I know why it's that. It's because he had the whole story with The Rock. It's a cool story for MMA Master Zone, Themba Gorimbo, but the guy's 1-1 in the UFC. First fight, lost to AJ Fletcher. Fletcher grabs a hold of the neck and submits him in the second round after a pretty uneventful first round where Themba Gorimbo did get the takedown, but then Fletcher ended up on top, and Fletcher ended up getting that control in the first round. Got submitted in the second round, did Gorimbo. He beats Takashi Sato in his next one. Takashi Sato has not been very good as of late. He's 2-5 in the UFC. The only time he was ever good is when he got the win over Ben Saunders in his first fight in the UFC. I guess he beat Jason Witt, so made him 2-1 at the time. Lost 4 straight. Sato's now out of the UFC. Oh my goodness. But Gorimbo now will get Pete Dead Game Rodriguez, a guy who, well, his one win is Mike the Truth Jackson. So I don't really know what to make of this fight. Because if you know MMA, you know Mike the Truth Jackson is, the guy who I guess he beat Pat Miletich. He fought Pat Miletich a couple months ago, which is ridiculous. But yeah, that Pat Miletich, he went out there and fought. Pat Miletich, by the way, is 55 years old, and he just beat Pat Miletich. Did Mike the Truth Jackson. So Mike the Truth Jackson owns wins over CM Punk, Dean Barry, and Pat Miletich. But actually, the CM Punk fight's a no contest. And shout out to CM Punk. Bro went back to the WWE only to lose the Royal Rumble and not main event WrestleMania, even though he's probably going to do that anyway. But still, he got eliminated in the Royal Rumble by Dusty's son. That's great. But Mike the Truth Jackson, is the one UFC win for Pete Dead Game Rodriguez. And again, any real fighter is going to beat Mike Jackson, or not washed up fighter. I'm looking at you, Pat Miletich. What are we doing? So again, Rodriguez wins the fight. Now he gets Themba Gorimbo. What does Rodriguez do well? He'll swing. He will swing and he will try to knock your head off. That's really the base of Pete Dead Game Rodriguez's game. It's kind of all he does. I'll be honest with you. He swings big. Gorimbo is the more technical fighter and is the all-around better fighter. I think Gorimbo has a lot more skills in terms of getting the fight down. I think Gorimbo, again, that's what he did against Takashi Sato. I think that's what he's going to look to do against Rodriguez. That's why I do think the odds are so inflated for Themba Gorimbo. It's because of the work he's going to be able to do with his grappling. Will he be able to submit Rodriguez? I don't know. We really haven't seen the grappling at all of Pete Rodriguez yet. I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, Gorimbo is going to be able to submit him. I think Themba Gorimbo wins the fight by second round submission. I'm banking on the fact that I don't think Pete Rodriguez's grappling is good at all, because we just simply haven't seen it. In all of his fights, Rodriguez, none of them have gone to the ground. None of them. His first fight, a minute 25 knockout win, then a 10-second win back in Icon, then a 41-second win, then a 2-minute win. He gets knocked out by Jack Della Maddalena, and then he beats Mike Rodriguez. We have not seen Pete Rodriguez pass the first round. There are so many holes, not holes in his game, but so many things we don't know about the game of Pete Rodriguez. We don't know a lot of things about him. Seriously, we don't. Because he has barely been in the octagon. He's barely been in the cage. The last time he lost was an amateur fight against Terry Lyles back in Iron Boy MMA for the Iron Boy MMA Vacant Middleweight Championship in 2019. It's an amateur fight, and what happened? He got subbed in 95 seconds. I feel like this is a fight where Gorimbo, at least the guys over there at MMA Masters, it's a pretty good coaching staff over there. You've got Cesar Carniero, you've got Daniel Valverde. Those are Colby Covington's guys over at MMA Masters. They're gonna look at this fight and they're gonna immediately look for the takedown. I think Gorimbo's gonna do that immediately, and I'm actually gonna change my pick. Themba Gorimbo first round submission. I'm banking on the fact Dead Game Rodriguez does not know what to do on the ground. I think that he is a pure boxer, and if that doesn't happen, Gorimbo is going to get him later in this fight, and Gorimbo's gonna make him tired because, oh, by the way, Rodriguez has not seen past the halfway mark of the first round. Or I think he did that against Della Maddalena. He did it for 30 seconds. The guy has not been deep into a fight. So here we go. This is the fight that I think he's going to get dragged into, because Gorimbo shouldn't go out there and strike with him. Gorimbo should look to take him down. That's what he's gonna do. I think Gorimbo is going to give him hell. The only way Pete Dead Game Rodriguez wins is if he swings big in the first round and knocks out Gorimbo. I don't think it's happening. Give me Themba Gorimbo to win the fight. I'll take him by first round knockout. Or sorry, first round submission. I think you get pretty good odds on that. We'll see what happens in that fight. Okay, on to our next one. We have got Charles Johnson taking on Azat Muskum in this fight. Maksum. For Maksum, undefeated at 17-0. This is a guy who's coming off a split decision victory over a very old Tyson Nam. Maksum, I guess, wins the fight. I don't know. I thought Tyson Nam won, I'll be honest. Maksum wins the first, slightly, I think. Second and the third, I thought Tyson Nam won. I don't know. I thought Nam won 2-1, honestly. That was on the Holly Holm and Myro Bueno Silva fight night card. Now he gets Charles Johnson. Now, Charles Johnson, the former LFA champion, comes into the UFC, immediately gets booked against Muhammad Mokaev, and he loses the fight. No shame in that. He beats Zhalgas Zhumagulov, and he beats Jimmy Flick. Then he loses 3 in a row. Ode Osborne, Cody Durden, Rafael Estivam. Now he gets Azat Maksum in this fight. Maksum, this is interesting because Maskum's a guy who, has fought in Octagon, which is a promotion over in Kazakhstan. He's a Kazakhstani guy. He's undefeated. Sure, I think they kind of, matched him up with guys he's supposed to beat. They booked him into eventually getting a UFC shot, and this is what they did. He comes in, he beats Tyson Nam barely, split decision victory. What do we know about Azat Maksum? He wants to grapple, he's going to look for the legs, he's going to shoot, he's going to look for a takedown, he's going to look for a submission. Charles Johnson has had some trouble with that. Let's just say it how it is. The one time he has countered that, and the one time he has, the one time that he has fought against a grappler and won was Jimmy Flick, which I don't think is very hard to do. I think Malcolm X Gordon, 2 weeks ago was in a very good spot to beat Jimmy Flick, and he just sold the bag and lost, and then he retired. I mean, again, Jimmy Flick feels like he's halfway out the sport at this point, and he was still able to beat Malcolm Gordon, right? So that's why Malcolm Gordon retired. Let's just be honest with ourselves. But shout out to him. He's gotten farther than anywhere I'm ever going to get in MMA because, I'm not going to pursue that. But anyways, Charles Johnson beats Jimmy Flick, loses to Ode Osborne. Close fight in the feed. I love Ode Osborne. Picasso of MMA, really fun fighter. That's my guy, Ode Osborne. Osborne won the fight because of the takedowns. I mean, seriously, I know he didn't have any control, really. He had limited control once the fight went on the ground. But you know what flipped the second and the third rounds for Ode Osborne? Was the takedowns. He won the first round, and the second and third were very close, but what flipped those rounds for Osborne was the takedown he was able to get. He ends up winning, I believe it was the third round he won because of that takedown. He was able to get 2 minutes of control, all Ode needed to win the fight. Then Charles Johnson fights Cody Durden. Well, what is the American wrestler going to do? Durden's going to go out there, put the wrestling boots on, and grapple and wrestle. That's what Durden did, and Durden beat Johnson. Rafael Estivam, again, Johnson outstrikes him 72-18, but Estivam has 10 minutes of control. He gets the win by decision. That's what's hurt Charles Johnson. Johnson came out real strong in that third round, outstruck Estivam 54-9. Still, that was not enough to win the fight for Charles Johnson because he lost those first two. 10-point must system. He loses the first 2 rounds. He ends up losing the fight. I fear that Charles Johnson's going to get put in the same exact spot here where he gets taken down in the first couple rounds and he's playing catch up late in the fight. Because again, Maksum is going to look to grapple, and I think he's going to have his way. Again, Charles Johnson, when he fights just straight strikers like Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he wins and he looks good. And again, that was a close fight, but I thought Charles Johnson probably did enough to win. It was a very close fight, though. Some people thought that Zhumagulov won the fight. That's fine. But Johnson looked good in his element there. This is not his element. You are going to have a guy who's going to shoot on his legs, who is going to remain persistent in finding that takedown, and that's Azat Maksum here. I'm going to take the Kazakhstani to win the fight, and the Kazakhstani will get it done by decision. Give me Azat Maksum to win the fight by unanimous decision. On to our next one. Molly McCann takes on Diana Belbita in this fight. You've got the Romanian in Belbita, who is around a plus 215 underdog, and you got the favorite in Meatball Molly McCann. This will be the featured prelim on this card. Okay, Molly McCann. I don't like Molly McCann. I'll just say it straight up. So if that influences my pick at all or influences how I see this fight, I will just say it. I am sick of the shtick. I really don't like Molly McCann. I'll be honest. Diana Belbita is a fighter who's not the greatest. She's 2-4 in the UFC, and her wins are Hannah Goldie and Maria Oliveira. Now, at one point in time, apparently, someone told Maria Oliveira she fights like Anderson Silva. I don't know how that happened, but Diana Belbita has beat her. Belbita's losses are Molly McCann in her first fight, Liana Joshua in her second fight, Gloria De Paula after that, and then Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Now, normally, in a fight like this, I would tend to pick against Molly McCann. However, I feel like it's very important we talk about these two fighters' first fight. This is a rematch. Molly McCann and Diana Belbita fought back on a Friday night, October 2019 in Boston. Main event, Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman. Molly McCann wins the fight. She wins a decision. The two women trade on the feet, but Molly McCann really took advantage, when she was able to get takedowns, and also, again, she was just able to do a lot more damage than Diana Belbita. Molly McCann wins the fight 30-25. She dominates. And again, say what you want about what's happened since then. My thing is, how has Diana Belbita really gotten better? I know it was supposed to be 30-26 because Belbita grabbed the cage when McCann was looking for takedowns, but man, I mean, I don't trust me. I want to pick against Molly McCann. I really do. I can't bring myself to pick against her here. Seriously, she loses to Stoliarenko. Yeah, whatever. Where does Belbita have her in trouble here? Where? And the UFC, when they booked Molly McCann against Erin Blanchfield, they knew what they were doing. They built up a little bit of hype on Molly McCann, and they said, okay, we're going to feed you straight to Erin Blanchfield because we want Erin Blanchfield to eventually become a title challenger. Now, if Blanchfield beats Manon Fido in Atlantic City, New Jersey, she will be getting that next title shot. And, again, there's a reason they did that, because Erin Blanchfield versus Molly McCann was a complete mismatch at UFC 281 in Madison Square Garden. Again, what has changed since the first McCann-Belbita fight? I think Molly McCann is still the same style of fighter. She goes, she's able to go for crazy output like she did in that first Belbita fight. She still goes for takedowns, someone she needs to. She's the same type of fighter. What about Diana Belbita? She's the same type of fighter as well. I know that was her first fight in the UFC, but I mean, she beat Hannah Goldie and she beats Maria Oliveira, but you look at her last fight against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz just beats her. It's a stand-up fight on the feet, and Diana Belbita gets outstruck by Karolina. Now, do I think Karolina would outstrike Molly McCann? I really do think so. I think Karolina has really turned a page since that Andrade loss, I guess. She has looked better as of late, and good for Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm glad her career has not gone to the complete dumps after that fight and after that losing streak. But again, Diana Belbita is going to fight the same exact fight that she fought against Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Molly McCann. It's going to be the same exact thing, just that Molly McCann's probably going to switch up with more takedowns, and I really don't see a way how Diana Belbita is going to win the fight. Trust me, I hate to say it, but Molly McCann's going to win this fight. I think she's going to win the same exact way the first fight ended up. She's going to win by unanimous decision. I know it was like 4.5 years ago, that first fight, but seriously, when you look at both these fighters, what has changed? Seriously, nothing really to me has changed since that first fight. I know Molly McCann's been fighting at 125, and again, that's probably the difference. The first fight was at 125. This is at 115 pounds. As long as Molly's able to make the weight, she will be able to win. I'm not that concerned about the pick. Molly McCann's going to win the fight by unanimous decision. Unfortunately for the MMA masses, that is what is going to happen. Okay, on to our next one. We have got controversial figure Charles Radtke taking on Gilbert Urbina. Oh man, if I repeated what Charles Radtke said his last fight, I'd be taken off the site. Anyways, Urbina gets Charles Radtke in this one. Gilbert Urbina is a former fighter on The Ultimate Fighter. He went in there, he got the shot on the finale because of an injury to Trayshawn Gore, and he goes in there and he loses a fight where he gets submitted against Brian Battle in the second round. Since then, Urbina was able to win a fight where he finished Orion Kosi, and I believe it was the second round he did. Yes, that was earlier on in 2023. Urbina now fights Charles Radtke. Now, take everything away from what Charles Radtke said at the end of the fight. He said a word that starts with an F and ends with a T, and he directed it to the Australian fans. Okay, was it a little bit funny when it happened? Yeah, because DC laughed too, and it happened again later on in the card. Manel Kopp says the same exact thing. I can't believe it happened twice in the same card, and Sean Strickland was actually not one of the guys to say it. But still, you know what I'm saying. I'm not going to say it, obviously, right? So, it's crazy he said it, right? Take that away from what happened. The Blood Diamond fight, it's not great. It's really not. It's what you expect an MMA fighter to do to Blood Diamond. It's really what you expect an MMA fighter to do to him. Radtke is an all-around mixed martial arts fighter, so Charles Radtke is going to take him down. He's going to hold him up against the fence, and Charles Radtke is going to win the fight. Now, does that fight really show us anything? Does that show us like Radtke's a great fighter or anything? It really doesn't. We learned nothing about Charles Radtke in that fight. We really didn't, because a lot of guys, and pretty much, I think personally, almost every UFC fighter beats Blood Diamond. Just because Blood Diamond is not Alex Pereira. He's a kickboxer who's one of Israel Adesanya's guys at CKB, and he went to the UFC and went 0-3. Okay, it is what it is. Now Radtke's gonna have to fight a real fighter in Gilbert Urbina, a very talented grappler, a very talented jiu-jitsu player, and a guy who is able to find finishes on the feet as well. I think I said earlier that he submitted Orion-Kosi. No, he finished Orion-Kosi on the feet, caught him with a really nice liver kick, puts him down, folds him. Urbina wins the fight. Right, Gilbert Urbina is also able to take him down as well. Took him down twice in that fight against Orion-Kosi. So Urbina is really able to mix in all of his different skills. Prior to the Ultimate Fighter, you did see him look for the submissions a lot. He's able to pick up back-to-back submission wins going into his LFA. I wasn't a title fight, but a main event against Sean Brady. Of course, Brady beats him by unanimous decision, but I really don't think Urbina is bad at all. I think he's got heavy hands. I think he's got skills in the feet. I think his grappling is good too. This is, again, for Radtke, this is a tough test. It really is, because you go again from a straight kickboxer to an all-around mixed martial arts fighter, right? Urbina is 6'3", Charles Radtke is 5'9", so a huge height discrepancy in this fight, which we'll see if that really plays a difference, because the reach advantage is only 3 inches for Gilbert Urbina, and you really can never trust the listed heights, because sometimes guys look a lot, closer in height than they are actually listed. But this is going to be interesting. Radtke, I didn't even know Charles Radtke was an MMA Masters guy. I didn't know that. So MMA Masters with 2 guys in this card, in Radtke and Themba Gorimbo. What was Charles Radtke before the UFC? Well, he won the Cage Fury welterweight championship in his last fight prior to the UFC, where he goes out there and beats Raheem Forrest, a guy who was looked at into the UFC as well. Forrest, a guy who fought Danny Barlow in the Contender Series and lost by first-round knockout just this last year. Radtke has a loss to Justin Montalvo back in 2021. He lost to Chris Gonzalez back in Bellator in 2019. He's been around. He's a guy who's had a bunch of fights. Primarily, Radtke, though, was looking for the kill in the feet. However, again, you didn't see that in his last fight, because Blood Diamond is the exact opposite of a wrestler. He's a striker, so you're going to try to go out there and you're going to try to take him down or hold him against the fence, obviously, right? So we're going to see what game Charles Radtke comes out with here, obviously. I think you're going to see primarily a striking base. I think that can go a couple ways. I think it really can, because I think Urbina will either be willing to strike with him and engage in that type of fight, or Urbina just straight up goes for the wrestling and the grappling. Either way, I do like what Gilbert Urbina brings to the table here. I think Urbina's got a lot more skills to beat him, and I think you do see somewhat of a striking exchange here, or you see a lot of striking exchanges in the feet. I think Gilbert Urbina is able to win the fight. I'm going to take Urbina to win by second round TKO. Again, Justin Montalvo just about 2.5 years ago was able to finish Charles Radtke. I think Gilbert Urbina is able to do the same. Really like the Urbina we saw in the Orion-Kosi fight. I think he parlays that into a big victory here. Give me Gilbert Urbina to win the fight by second round knockout. On to our next one. This is a good one here between Alihashkab Khizriev taking on Mahmoud Muradov. Got my names mixed up there, but Khizriev undefeated, 14-0. This is a guy who is 1-0 in the UFC. Now, his one win comes back a couple of years ago on a fight night, or a couple of years ago now, on a fight night in Columbus, Ohio. He goes out there and he beats Dennis Tululin by a rear naked choke submission in the second round. All right, great. Dennis Tululin loses to a lot of guys in the UFC. Now this is a huge step up in competition in Mahmoud Muradov. Again, we're going to see how good Khizriev is right now. We're going to see how good he is. Khizriev has been booked against a lot of guys in the UFC, and they've not happened. After winning on the Contender Series in 2020, Khizriev is booked against Wellington Turman. Fight doesn't happen because Turman withdraws. Okay, then booked against Kyle Dawkins. COVID takes out that fight. Alessio Di Chirico, Khizriev withdraws. Abus Magomedov, Khizriev withdraws. Beats Tululin, then booked against Jacob Malkoun. Khizriev withdraws. Now we are stuck on Khizriev versus Mahmoud Muradov after taking the entire year of 2023 off. Again, this is the fight to determine how good Alihashkab Khizriev is. This is the fight that's going to determine that. Because we don't really know how good he is yet. Muradov's a guy who's 26-8 from Uzbekistan. He's coming off a win over Brian Barberena. I think everyone kind of saw that one coming. It was kind of interesting matchmaking there. Well, I don't know why. But again, you wanted to get Muradov, I guess, back on the winning track after losing back-to-back fights to Jared Mearshart and Kyle Borjaio. But remember the hype Muradov had going into the Mearshart fight. He was 4-0 in the UFC. If he beats Muradov in a fight that he's a -600 favorite in, everything changes. He loses, though, to Mearshart. He runs out of gas in the second round. Well, it wasn't that early in the second round. He gets beat on the ground. Mearshart takes his back and chokes him out. Then he loses to Kyle Borja. Okay, a lot of guys lose to Kyle Borja. Borja is coming off a win over Abus Magomedov. And then he goes out there and beats Brian Barberena in a fight. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do. He knocked down Barberena a couple times. He took him down 13 times. It was a mismatch. Muradov Khizriev is going to be interesting because, again, we will find out how good Khizriev is. Can Khizriev take him down? Can Khizriev control him and take his back? I tend to think he will be able to. Again, I don't think Muradov is truly as good as we thought he was at one point. You look at his wins. Now, looking back on them, they are not the greatest. He was 3-0 at the time, not 4-0. But still, looking back at the wins, okay. Alessio Di Chirico, yeah. Trevor Smith, no longer in the UFC, a guy who's 14-10. And then Andrew Sanchez, a guy who's now fighting under the PFL banner, right? Looking back at them, they're not the best wins. And the other win, again, is Brian Barberena, a serviceable UFC guy, but a guy that Muradov, again, is definitely able to beat, and a guy that Muradov is definitely on a higher level than. So, yeah, were we, putting too much into Muradov stock at one point? I guess so. I think Khizriev's going to beat him. I do think so. Now, I am a little bit concerned and a little bit interested to see because, again, Ali Hashim Khizriev has not fought in a while. He has not fought in a minute. He's fought once since 2020. That's a very long time. Ring rust is a thing. It was apparent when Colby Covington fought Leon Edwards for the welterweight championship. That is again, Dominic Cruz is the only guy who doesn't believe in ring rust. And the only guy that ring rust doesn't apply to. Everyone else it does. Right? So it's going to play a factor in this fight. I think it's going to take Khizriev a little bit to get going. But I think eventually he's going to find that submission. I think he will prove that he is here for real. So I'm going to take the Black Wolf to win. Give me Ali Hashim Khizriev to win the fight by second round submission. We're going to go Khizriev by second round submission. I think he's better grappling wise than Makhmud Muradov. I think, again, Muradov's a little bit overrated after his little winning streak. I think Khizriev's going to win. Give me Khizriev by second round sub. On to our next one. We have got Viviane Araujo taking on Natalia Silva. Again, we said in the open, this is a fight to get Natalia Silva, or this is an opportunity for Natalia Silva to really get into the top 10 of the weight class. Silva is undefeated in the UFC. She is 4-0. And again, like a lot of opportunities and a lot of spots in this card, this is a big test for her. This is the test to see how good Natalia Silva is. We know she's good, but we don't know, is she top 10 good, right? She's a huge favorite over Viviane Araujo. Araujo coming off a win just a couple months ago against Jennifer Maia, a fight she was an underdog in the UFC Apex. But this is going to be interesting because Araujo at one point was in a spot against Alexa Grasso and in a fight where it was for the number one contender spot. She fought Grasso fought Araujo, and Grasso beats Araujo and then beats Valentina right after. Right, so if Araujo wins a 5-round main event against Alexa Grasso, she's put in a world championship fight. She goes the full distance with Alexa Grasso. She trades with her on the feet. Grasso does get the upper edge, but that's how close Araujo at one point was to the world championship. Then she drops the fight to Amanda Ribas, and then she is coming off a win over Jennifer Maia. Maia took her down a couple times. Araujo took her down a couple times, but at the end of the day, it was the control out of Araujo that won her that fight. She wins it 2-1. You give the first round to Jennifer Maia because Maia actually surprisingly outstruck her, which doesn't really bode well, I think, for Araujo going into this Natalia Silva fight, but that's besides the point. This fight is going to be dependent on if Natalia Silva can keep this fight on the feet, because Araujo's only pathway to success in this fight for me is by grappling with Natalia Silva. That's her only chance, is if she's able to go out there and take Silva down and, just lay on her, basically, because that's how she beat Jennifer Maia. We know Araujo is good, at least defensively, on the ground, because, again, Jennifer Maia is good with her jiu-jitsu, and Araujo was able to stay out of submissions. She really didn't let Maia really throw anything up. Maia didn't throw up a submission off her back. Araujo attempted one in her own right, but still, this is where this fight, again, is going to be won and lost. It's going to be won and lost in that battle that Araujo is going to have with Natalia Silva trying to take this fight down. I don't think she's going to be able to do so. Natalia Silva has been pretty good so far in her UFC run, at least defending takedowns. The only time she was taken down was against Teresa Belbita. Belbita went 1-for-7 on her takedown attempts. She was able to get one, but other than that, Silva was able to keep the fight on the feet. The fight that sticks out for me is the Jasmine Jasudavicius fight. We know how good Jasmine is. Jasmine Jasudavicius is a fighter who's cracking into the top 15, who's got wins over Miranda Maverick, just beat Priscilla Cachoeira. Jasudavicius is good. Natalia Silva beat her down bad. She won that fight 30-26, 30-27. Silva was able to stuff 6 takedowns out of Jasmine Jasudavicius. Jasudavicius was not able to get 1 takedown. That's the fight. That was still Silva's first fight in the UFC, but it points out to me how good she truly is, right? Silva's good. She was able to take down Jasvidius 2 times in that fight in her own right. I don't know why they gave her Victoria Leonardo. That just felt like a murder, and she did that. She knocked her out in the first round. Andrea Lee fight, it's kind of boring. It was in Boston in 2023. It wasn't the greatest fight, but Silva goes out there and wins. I am not concerned about the striking game, though. I think Natalia Silva is levels ahead of Viviane Araujo on the feet. It feels to me that Araujo's striking has kind of gotten worse. I don't know. Like, she wasn't horrible in the Grasso fight. She wins a round on the feet in that fight. She's like, I don't know. I feel like Araujo's striking isn't as good as it once was for some reason. I don't know what happened. But, like, I remember when she bloodied up, was it the Andrea Lee fight? I know Lee's nose, bleeds pretty quickly, but I believe that was the fight that Lee got busted open in. Anyways, Lee did knock down Araujo in that fight too, but she was able to take her down and hold her down. But I don't know. I really think Araujo's striking has somehow gotten worse for some reason. Or it was the Modafferi fight. I think was the Modafferi fight where she played Modafferi up? I don't know. There was one fight Araujo had a really good showing on the feet. Or was it Montana De La Rosa? I don't remember which one it was, I'll be honest with you. But I don't know. I don't think Araujo's as good as she once was looked at. And again, I think credit to that was that she did go 5 rounds with Grasso. I think Natalia Silva wins. There's not much else to really put into it. I think she's going to win a decision. I don't think it's going to be the best fight, but I think Natalia Silva is able to keep the fight standing, and Natalia Silva is able to go out there and win the fight. Again, even if the fight does hit the mat, I think Silva's able to work back up. But again, if Jasmine Jasvidius goes over 600 takedowns, I know Araujo is a slightly better grappler, but still, if that's happening, I think that we are going to see Natalia Silva be fine against Araujo. Give me Natalia Silva by unanimous decision. Our next fight is Randy Brown and Muslim Salikhov. I talked about that fight. Nothing's really changed since the original bout in December, so I'm just going to roll that, and then we'll go straight into the co-main event between Renato Moicano and Drew Dober right after. Randy Brown taking on Muslim Salikhov in the welterweight division. Randy Brown coming off that unanimous decision victory over Wellington Turman in his last fight. For Muslim Salikhov, comes to this fight with a record of 19 wins and 4 losses. I hope my camera's not crooked here. I'm using my phone, I'll be honest, so that's why if the audio's off or different, that's why. If it's crooked, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm crooked. Okay, I'm adjusting on the fly here. Anyways, Salikhov at 19-4 comes into this fight with the loss to Nicholas Dalby in his last one. He beats Andre Fiallo before that, loses to Li Jingliang after that as well. I'm using a laptop for this time, so I don't have my PC with me. But yeah, so Brown comes in this fight after the win against Turman in his last one. He loses to Jack Della Maddalena before that, but that's expected, of course. Maddalena undefeated, still at least in the UFC, coming off the win over Kevin Holland. But other than that, for Randy Brown, if you take away the loss to JDM, big wins over Alex Oliveira, Jared Gooden, Chaos Williams, and Francisco Trinaldo. And then again, the loss to Maddalena, but then the win over Wellington Turman in his last one. Randy Brown has been pretty solid. He's excelled at getting the submissions, at least in the Alex Oliveira fight. You've seen the stand-up game as well. Look better and better as he's gone on in the fight that he loses. He beats Chaos Williams, gets dropped, but still comes back and wins the fight on the feet. He outstrikes Jared Gooden for 15 minutes. He goes out there, knocks down Francisco Trinaldo. He takes down Wellington Turman when he needs to. Again, Randy Brown's been fighting pretty damn well. Salikhov's a guy who has traded wins and losses recently. He's slid down the card, of course, to the opener here, and his fight that he lost to Nicholas Dalby, I know Dalby's coming off the win over Bonfim in his last fight in Brazil, and it's something that I didn't think that was going to happen with Nicholas Dalby, but Salikhov loses the fight by unanimous decision. Before that, he beats Andre Fiallo, but everyone's been beating Andre Fiallo as of late. Lose to Li Jingliang, beats Trinaldo, who of course lost to Randy Rude Boy Brown as well. But you're gonna see a striking fight here with the King of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikhov, and Randy Rude Boy Brown. You've got the wrestling out of both these guys. Salikhov can go there when he needs to, same with Randy Brown, but I think you're gonna see a striking fight between these two guys. I just think that's where this fight is going to end up playing out. I think Brown's gonna want to strike with Salikhov. Again, Salikhov is an older guy who's 39 years old. Brown is 6 years younger than him. And I think Brown's just way better at this point in both guys' career. I think Brown is the way better striker. I think he's got faster hands. If the fight hits the mat, I don't mind the ground game that Randy Brown possesses either. So I think Brown is able to get the win. You're looking at the odds, minus 260 for Randy Rude Boy Brown, plus 210 for Muslim Salikhov. You look at the Tapology picks, 79% going with Randy Brown, 21% going with Muslim Salikhov. Again, I feel good in the Randy Brown pick here. I think he is the better striker, and I'm not concerned about whatever happens if this fight is hit the ground, because I think, again, Brown is good enough to remain competitive on the ground as well. So give me Randy Brown to win this fight. I think he does win it by decision. Salikhov is a tough guy to finish. He has only been finished once by knockout in his entire career. That comes all the way back. Actually, that comes to the Li Jingliang fight. I forgot that happened. again, I wouldn't take that too much away from Salikhov. Li Jingliang is good, but again, I just think Randy Brown's going to be able to capitalize on this fight. I think he's going to be able to win. So give me Randy Brown by decision. Co-main event time. We have got Renato Moicano taking on Drew Dober. Money Moicano. You know, he said a pretty funny quote going into this fight night, and I agree with them. And okay, to a certain extent. Renato Moicano, Money Moicano said, nobody gives, I believe he said damn, or he probably said nobody gives a shit about a fight night. And honestly, like, okay, yeah, because they're in the Apex. And seriously, this is a conversation I have every single time I come onto one of these videos, and every single time it is in the UFC Apex, I say, why are there still fights in the UFC Apex? Because, again, seriously, I know it's a lower tier main event with Roman Dolidze and Nassourdine Imavov, but even this would go out there, and again, I pick a random city every single time I make a video like this, but if you take the sport to, I don't know, so, like, seriously, put it in Indianapolis, Indiana, that still will sell out the Gamebridge Fieldhouse. That's the drawing power of the UFC. It doesn't matter who's in the main event. There's so many cities that have not had a UFC fight in forever. If you even think pre-pandemic, there were fight nights booked in Portland, in Omaha, Nebraska. Those two cities still have not gotten cards. You put this fight in Omaha or put it in Portland, it still probably sells out. I don't know why the UFC's their refusal to book shows or book cards in arenas. Like, it's just, there's so many places that want UFC fight nights, and just even any UFC card, pay-per-view fight night, doesn't matter. And they literally go to the same cities every year, and they add like 2 new cities every year. It's stupid. They should really, like, again, I remember when the UFC tried to tell us there's only going to be 10 Apex cards this year. Well, let's look at the UFC schedule real damn quick. And you can tell by the schedule already, there's going to be way more than 10 this year. Already, right? We already had Anka Eliav Walker. We're going to have Dolidze Imavov. Next week, Hermanson Joe Pyfer. Then we're going to have the card that was originally supposed to be in Saudi Arabia, but then changed the UFC Apex. Then you have Tuivasa Tybura, which, by the way, why the hell is Tai Tuivasa fighting in the UFC Apex? That's beyond me. You've got Amanda Ribas, Rose Namajunas. Then you've got Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen. I believe that's 7, right? Then you've got another one scheduled for April 27th. That one actually has not been confirmed from the Apex. But still, you already have 7 in the first half of the year, not even the first half of the year. It's going to be at least 13, or at least like 12, I'd say, at the very minimum, in the Apex this year. It's so stupid. We are over the pandemic. And out of all the fight promotions, to be post-pan, or even just like organizations in sports or in the world, to be, like, it's the UFC is so, like, I don't know, like, they were the first ones back during the pandemic. They were not the first one to go back to crowds, but still, what are we doing? What are we doing sitting in the UFC Apex? I get it saves them money, but damn, it just, again, it feels like we're getting sparring sessions sometimes. I don't know. But anyways, back to this fight. Renato Moicano and Drew Dober is a good fight. It is a good fight. Renato Moicano, again, did not fight in 2023. That sucks. He was booked into Arman Tsarukyan, Moicano got hurt, so that fight never happened, and now Moicano is here on this Apex card. And he delivered that tremendous, fiery speech after he beats Brad Riddell. He says he's all about the money now, money Moicano. And how does the UFC repay him? They say, you know what, you go to the UFC Apex. The guy has not fought in the UFC Apex, by the way, since, I don't know, 2021. He's had 3 fights outside of the Apex. So, like, it's just, he fights Alexander Hernandez in Houston, I believe. Then he goes fights RDA in Vegas. Then he fights Brad Riddell in New York. And then, okay, you go back to the UFC Apex. But again, the Brad Riddell fight was good. He submits him in the first round. He goes up there. The Rafael Dos Anjos fight was on short notice. That was supposed to be RDA and Rafael Fiziev, right? That was supposed to be Fiziev, I think. Yeah. That was supposed to be Rafael Fiziev. Again, Fiziev pulls out. Moicano takes it on short notice. Loses the fight, but still, again, goes to the full 5 and takes a beating. He beats Alexander Hernandez. Like, you know what Moicano's really good at. Moicano's a really good grappler who's going to try to take you down and submit you, right? Moicano gets Drew Dober, a guy who's going to swing. Dober, again, that's kind of his game at this point. Drew Dober goes up there and tries to knock you out. Really good performance over Bobby Green, end of 2022. The Ricky Glenn fight does what he's kind of supposed to do to Ricky Glenn in 2023. He loses to Matt Frivola, beats Rafael Alves back in 2022, beats Terrence McKinney in a really good fight, one of the better rounds of MMA you are ever going to watch on the Santos Ankalaev main card. Drew Dober's good. Drew Dober is a good fighter. I do feel like he's going to struggle some with the jiu-jitsu of Renato Moicano, but in all fairness, a lot of guys do. A lot of guys do struggle with Moicano. Moicano's striking game, I think, is still getting better. I hope it is. It is evolving. But really, for Moicano, it's all about finding the fight on the ground and getting it to the ground. So as long as he's able to do so, and that's what has impacted Moicano, and that's what, if Moicano was a really good wrestler, this guy be in the top 5. That's kind of what a lot of these jiu-jitsu guys at least have trouble with, is getting the fight down to the ground. Like Mackenzie Dern, tremendous grappler. It's all about getting the takedown and getting it down. If Moicano is able to get Dober down, he's going to win. I believe he's going to. I think Renato Moicano makes short work of Drew Dober. Renato Moicano wins the fight by first round submission. However, this is going to go one or two ways. Moicano gets a submission in the first round, or Drew Dober gets the knockout in the first round. Neither of these guys are going to be able to hang for that long in their opponent's strength. Again, Moicano's not going to be able to hang, I don't think, very long in a striking affair of Drew Dober. Last time we've seen Moicano stuck on the feet, it was Khizriev, and he got knocked out in the first round. I know, again, RDA, but still, I guess a really good striker. It was Khizriev. And then Drew Dober, I think, again, will really succumb to the pressure on the ground to Renato Moicano. I know he hasn't been submitted since the Mahashev fight in 2021, but still, if Moicano is able to get the submission, trust me, the takedown, trust me, Moicano is going to find the submission that follows. So, get me Renato Moicano. I think he's able to win the fight by first round submission, even though, again, it's going to be quick, and it's going to go one of two ways very quickly. Okay, on to the main event here. We've got Roman Dolidze taking on Nassourdine Imavov here. Interesting main event spot for both these guys. Imavov 4-2 in the UFC. Imavov 4-2 in the UFC. Roman Dolidze 6-2 in the UFC. For Roman Dolidze, originally scheduled to face Derek Brunson and then Jared Cannonier at the end of 2023. Both those fights fell through. Brunson withdrew, obviously, to go to the PFL, and Jared Cannonier tore his MCL. Dolidze now is booked in a UFC main event against Nassourdine Imavov. We've seen Imavov in this main event spotlight before, looking back to the first card of 2023 against Sean Strickland in a fight that I believe Imavov, was he a favorite in? He was a favorite in that fight against the future world champion in Sean Strickland. He loses the fight by unanimous decision at I think it was like 205 or 195 catch weight. I think it was at 195 catch weight. It could have been 205. No, I think it was 205. It was 205 because Strickland took the fight on super short notice. Back-to-back main event in back-to-back fight nights for Sean Strickland because he fought Cannonier right before. Imavov technically has not won a fight since 2022. Now, okay, he was on his way to beat Chris Curtis. He was on his way to go out there and beat Curtis in that fight. It was in Vancouver, summer of last year. He's going to be up 2-0. There's an accidental clash of heads, and the fight gets called off. Curtis says he can't see. Okay, fine. Curtis tried to fight, but again, I think he kind of knew that he was down, so he kind of played it up a little bit. Which, again, credit to Chris Curtis, comes back, wins the fight, right? Oh, actually lost to Gaslam, but then comes back. Oh, no, that was after. That was after the Gaslam fight, was it? I'm getting my order of fights mixed up. That was after the Gaslam fight. So he comes back, beats Marc-Andre Barriault in his last fight by split decision. Good for him, right? Good for Chris Curtis. Imavov was going to win the fight, though. So, even though it is on the record as a no contest, I think we could see the writing on the wall that Nassourdine Imavov was going to go out there and win that fight. But again, on record, his last win is Joaquin Buckley back in 2022. Imavov, again, 4-2 in the UFC, lost to Phil Hawes, which I think Hawes would be really good if he had a chin. We saw that in his last fight against Bruno Ferreira. Again, doesn't have a chin, got knocked out. Imavov's wins, Jordan Williams, Ian Heinich, Edmund Shabazian, Joaquin Buckley. I mean, again, a solid record. Interesting, though, he's already back in another UFC main event since he hasn't technically won since his last UFC main event. But I think Imavov is going to switch it up a lot. Again, you've seen him with the grappling before and the wrestling, and you've also seen him with the striking as well. Dolidze, though, an interesting fighter in his own right. He's coming off a loss to Marvin Vettori in a pretty uneventful fight that people thought Dolidze won. I thought it was close, honestly, but the body of work Dolidze was able to put on before the Vettori fight is very impressive, right? 4-fight winning streak that starts with a boring fight win over Laureano Staropoli. Okay, we can kind of get rid of that. A huge knockout win over Kyle Dawkins, a knockout win over Phil Haas, and by far the most impressive win, a TKO victory over Jack Hermansson. That was nice. A really good win. Again, it's a weird position, but he goes out there and just on the ground from basically having Hermansson's back, he goes out there and gets the finish. He had back control, whatever. He gets some TKO in the end of the second round. Okay, good for Dolidze. Booked against Vettori. Decision lost. The people thought he could have won, but, it's debatable, right? Dolidze has power. He's got a solid wrestling base. He fishes for heel hooks a lot. That's what Dolidze will look for. But the guy's good. And he also spins. Oh, my goodness. He also... He has a lot of different skills in the feet. He throws a spinning back fist. That's the one he had over Michal Pasternak before making his way into the UFC. But again, Dolidze's a powerful guy. He's got a lot of power in the feet. He's a solid wrestler. He's from Georgia, the country of Georgia. I guess he fights out of the Ukraine now, apparently. I'm not sure about that. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's Tapology states. And again, for Dolidze, this is a guy, if he's going to make a run for the title at least, because he's in the top 10-ish now, it's going to have to be right now. He's 35 years old. And he's getting Imavov here, a guy who is still making his way up the weight class, who is actually 27 years old, fighting out of the MMA factory over there in Paris, France, with Coach Ferdinand Lopez. I'm interested to see where this fight just go. Imavov, again, I've seen him go out there and just get into striking affairs in the feet. If he goes blow for blow with Dolidze, though, at least early in the fight, I think he's going to lose. I am concerned with Dolidze's cardio, though, because we have seen Dolidze go deep into fights and not look great at the end of the fight. I'm looking at the Trevin Giles fight. That's the one loss that really sticks out for me with Dolidze. It's that in Vettori. He's only had 2 losses in the UFC, but didn't really look great in the Trevin Giles fight. But Dolidze, I think, is going to swing big early, and if he's able to crack the chin of Imavov, he's going to be able to win. And you know what? I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking Roman Dolidze to win the fight by first round knockout. I think it's going to be the biggest result of his career, man. I think Dolidze really is going to come through in this spot. I think he's going to come through in the spot against Nassourdine Imavov. Again, Imavov technically has not won a fight in 2 years. Concerning, right? I know, again, he was on his way to beat Chris Curtis. I think Dolidze, again, the wrestling's good enough to keep the fight on the feet. I think it is. I'll hope. And I think on the feet, I think Dolidze is going to really look for a big shot early and, rock Imavov early in the fight. I think he's going to get it. I think Nassourdine Imavov is going to get caught in this fight. I think Imavov's little run so far has been, he's lost to the guys he's supposed to lose to. He's beat the guys he's supposed to beat. Same could be said about Dolidze, I guess. But I think Dolidze is just slightly better everywhere here. I'm going to take Roman Dolidze to win the fight. I like the power advantage he does possess. And I think Roman Dolidze makes short work of Nassourdine Imavov. Give me Roman Dolidze, the Georgian, to win this fight in his first UFC main event. He will get it done by first round knockout. And folks, thank you all for watching our UFC Fight Night Imavov versus Dolidze, or Dolidze versus Imavov predictions here on the channel. We'll be back next week for another Fight Night card in the UFC Apex. Main event, Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer. 14 fights on that card next weekend, so make sure to come back for that one. It's going to be a long video next week. Folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Folks, thank you for watching. And Mamba, forever.